Trinity Rep and Providence Public Library present America 2, Reckoning and Resilience. Hosted by Providence Public Library's event coordinator, Janaea Kizzy, Trinity Rep's Director of Community Engagement, Michelle Cruz, resident actor and founder of the Center for Activism and Performance, Joe Wilson Jr. Welcome to America 2, It's Our People, with guests, filmmaker and skater Kenny Borge, public artist and activist Angie Gonzalez, musical guest City Maiga, and Asher Scofield of Frog and Toad. Hi, I'm Michelle Cruz, Director of Community Engagement at Trinity Rep. And I want to let you know that you're going to hear a lot of stories this evening, but we want you to share your story as well for inclusion in our culminating event. You can share your story of these times with us by calling the America 2 hotline at 401-259-0676 or email us at stories@TrinityRep. We're going to begin with a conversation that I had with Asher Scofield from an East Side shop you may have heard of, featured in Forbes magazine for his shirt, Knock It Off, Frog and Toad. Here's Asher.
Hi, I'm Asher Scofield from Frog and Toad. Hey, how are you? Oh, it's great to lay eyes on you. How you been?
Good. Well, I will ask you, where are you sitting right now?
Right. Yes, that. I am in my illustrious and picturesque stockroom.
Nice.
I do all of my Zoom calls in the basement, which, as you're aware, there's that whole rate my room phenomenon, which I am a perennial failure at. But I think that for me, this backdrop behind me kind of works because it's just my life, like it is, it's cluttered, and it's certainly representative of what my professional life is now, because we are more of a warehouse than a boutique where you browse and feel, peaceful or inspired or whatever that experience evoked in folks back in the times before.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm basically a basement.
Yeah. But it's a cool basement, which many basements are not cool. It is filled with awesome things.
Thank you. It's been so strange this year living in a little fishbowl. And that fishbowl is an actual physical manifestation, but also a social media product as well. So the window that you're referring to, and thank you for appreciating it, is a very simple, old school way of having some communication with our existing and former customers. And so having a pennant in the window that says Rhode Island will see it through is very much deliberate in trying to maintain that contact on a human level with people that we have deliberately given up over the past 365 days. Because so much of my communication with the outside world happens on social media. I think that it's important to be able to have those subtle, nuanced messages and conversations with people. And then in turn, because I'm not getting a message back from them, I will see an image of that very banner posted on Instagram or on Facebook, and it lets me know that somebody got my message, and it's like a thank you that's being relayed back to me. So it's been almost like you're being held hostage, and you hold a little note up to the window for the reporters out in the outside world to see your message. Like, tell my mom I'm okay. Yeah. They're going to let us out soon. We need to go back and remember that stay-at-home period that we all went through, and how how deeply different it was from anything any of us experienced in our lives. We were told to stay at home and not go out anywhere. We were under the impression that our automotive travel on the roads was being tracked and evaluated. How many people are on the roads going to, like, we were being watched.
Absolutely.
And the governor was saying not a good couple of days, we were seeing a lot of car activity on the roads. And we were, in essence, prisoners of our own making at home. And I think a lot of people psychologically were really feeling that. And at the same time, this shirt design that we had created was gathering all of this steam, and there was all of this demand for it. And it just was this natural progression where I was able to connect with individuals at their home and let them feel like there was somebody in this great big outside world that was there for them to entertain them for this brief period in their day. It was without question the highlight. For some people, it was the highlight of their week or their month, just to have that human contact in a time where there was zero.
Mm-hmm.
And it manifested itself in me driving my car onto their lawn and tearing up their sod, banging
garbage cans. I saw
banging into trash cans, and
cool.
I deliberately adopted this clown persona, and it was just genuinely coming from a place of trying to make everybody's life in that moment better.
Frog and Toad is here.
Hello? And the governor of Rhode Island has asked that you please knock it off. Shut it down. We're asking you to stay at home at this time. We want you to spread the word and not the virus. I'm
Nice
sorry
throw.
about that throw. Dr. Alexander Scott has also asked that you wash your hands. We are including a complimentary bar of Dial. Sorry about that throw. Thank you for doing your part. We are all in this together.
Asher, you rock. Thank you.
Knock it off. Shut it down.
Thank you.
I boil the experience of the past year down to three societal moments or elements. And one was obviously this pandemic and shutting everything down, and knowing the toll that was taking on our most vulnerable community members, our neighbors, that were most at risk, most economically disadvantaged, and or like our seniors who were experiencing that isolation. And so for me, it evoked this awareness that we were all in a community together, and brought me a feeling that we needed to look out for one another in a very heightened sense. We certainly all, or many of us, knew this intuitively, or had careers with nonprofits where we just operated that way. But I think that because it was a time of crisis, that was elevated. And for me, that need for care and that need for commitment to a holistic view of our community became really, really important. The other major point were the Black Lives Matter protests last summer. And it almost, in retrospect, and I think it's interesting because we as human beings, we all are storytellers, or we all have a need for a narrative and a story to make sense of our world, and to make sense of our role in it. And so it's interesting to reflect on the past year in terms of it being a narrative. And it feels like, in a way, there's almost no way that the Black Lives Matter movement wouldn't have hit the pinnacle that it did last summer, because in the context of COVID, we were looking at all of these communities that were more vulnerable, or that were experiencing an existence of inequality. So the two kind of went hand in hand for me, and that led to, because it happened as like a chapter 2 in 2020, it led to then a period of really deep introspection. And it wasn't a new experience for me personally, but it was incredibly heightened, where I think for myself, I was looking at the fact that we all have a part in oppressing others. And it is not something that you can acknowledge and flip a switch and suddenly there's an equality. It's something that requires a daily maintenance on oneself. And that being a chapter 2 for me in 2020 was perfect, because I had already been to this place where I was feeling this need to connect and help my community. And then the next chapter was needing to connect with myself and work on myself.
Can we go back to the Knock It Off shirt for a second? I love that you were able to raise so much money through that shirt and that initiative, and it kind of dovetailed into other stuff. But can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't think that shirt will ever go away. It's just a t-shirt, but it's now been entered into the historical record as an emblem for a period of time. And so there are people that still are purchasing it, that will call us up and ask us if we still have it. And I think it's just, it's a piece of a narrative at this point. And it's almost like it's been collected for posterity by a lot of people. And it's odd, again, coming back to humans needing to have a narrative and needing to participate in being a part of a story. That shirt's been such a story and such a narrative for me, and it's been interesting to have something that's a little bit bigger than you, in a way. It's strange to say that about a t-shirt, but it definitely was that. And with regard to our now former governor, because it was in essence a foundational support for the work that she was doing at the time, I do feel this strange interconnectedness to this person who was at that time leading us. And when I'll be honest, when she moved on from her job, I felt a gap in my soul, like, because even though the woman is a politician and a leader who's responsible for navigating this time and responsible for all of these people, because of what happened with selling a t-shirt that had her slogan at the time on it, I felt a gap when she left. It was weird. It was like a family member had moved away. It was very strange. But because this is Rhode Island, it all bears out. I have this amazing story. I was giving a presentation at LaSalle Academy, and I do like a lecture there twice a year, basically talking to kids about what it's like to run a business or certain projects that I have going on. And it's a lecture and a share about, what I'm doing in the community. So obviously I'm doing that on Zoom, and I'm focused on this Knock It Off project and the journey that was. And after an hour of rambling on, I signed off the Zoom call and checked my phone, and there was a text on my phone from the governor that said, OMG, my daughter was just in a lecture that you were giving. Great job. And I was just like, of course, in Rhode Island, I'm giving a lecture about this experience that happened in conjunction with the governor. And of course, her child was in the class that I was giving a lecture on. Only here are we that interconnected that we could randomly meet up on that point in time.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. It's that connection of Rhode Islanders that we are just this far apart, even though we are, unfortunately right now, physically far, but we're all intertwined in a weird and beautiful way. Yeah. I love that she texted you.
Yeah, I'm like, what's up? The governor texted. Okay.
I think we're going to have to really hone in on each other and lean on each other even more so than we think, I believe.
Yeah. I think that, first of all, I completely agree with you. And I think that it's important to remember that the art is still there in all things. And because you can never quell that need, coming back to it again, that need for a narrative and that need for a story. And the artists and the writers and the musicians are the best at storytelling. Mm-hmm. And like, we need that. And on a personal level, I really need that. I need so badly to hear those stories artfully told. I think it's almost, for me, I'm almost at a point where I know that nurses and hospital staff and frontline workers are heroes. I know that they're, a protagonist in 2020 and 2021. I know that people that are fighting for equality are protagonists. But I want somebody to engage in a narrative that I haven't looked at yet. And I want to hear stories that are a mystery yet to me. I think it's so important for our shared humanity to participate in that and have it delivered to us. And whether or not anybody's been aware that there's been a huge gap in that. And a lot of it comes into like production turnaround time. Like, Netflix is not able to tell the story of COVID yet because it takes a long time to produce that. Mm-hmm. Live theater, if we were able to, could be telling that right now. And, a musician could be telling that right now. A spoken word poet could be telling that right now. And because we've all been isolated at home somewhat and relegated to getting our entertainment from a Netflix or a Hulu or whatever, we're not getting that necessary fix for the story that we've all been directly involved with over the past year. And for me, that's kind of like an absence that I've been feeling. Yeah. I can't even articulate what an honor it is to be included in the project. And thank you. And especially as you lay out who some of the other voices are, it's really an honor to be included. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's great to talk to you. And, I've said it before, but you're a pretty inspiring dude. So I appreciate you very much and all that you've done in the community too.
I feel the exact same way about you. So, the feeling is completely mutual. And I'm so glad that, with everything that we've all been experiencing the past year, it's just really great to make connections. And you and I have really made one this past year. And I'm really grateful for that.
Me too. Me too. Yes. Yeah.
I'm happy to introduce award-winning and recent Berkeley College grad, returning to America too, Mr. Siddhi Micah.
Hey, everybody. Joe Wilson Jr. here. Once again, I'm a member of the Resident Acting Company at Trinity Rep and also the founder of the Center for Activism and Performance. And I am so happy to be joined by Janaea Kizzy of the Providence Public Library. And we are so happy to introduce two artists to you tonight. And I am especially grateful to be able to kick this off by introducing my friend Aganza, Angela Gonzalez. Now, let's be fully transparent, y'all. I met Angela's grandmother many years ago when she worked at a corner store down the block from my house on Federal Hill, where I still live. And then she started working at Cialo's Bakery on the Hill. And I got to tell you, your grandmother has probably caused many of us in our building to develop a case of diabetes with all those treats. But yeah. I loved Elaine like a mother, and she took really great care of me. And she always spoke of her granddaughter, who was an extraordinary artist. And I've watched your work. I've watched, your work evolve and your transformative nature of how you've been able to capture the imagination of our community. But, Angela, let's just be clear. Some folks may know you from the beautiful portrait you painted of me in the window at Trinity Rep. And I really thank you for touching her brother up. And some of you may recognize Angie from her work of a mural or a portrait that she painted downtown of a dear friend of hers, the Miss Rhode Island, USA, during the time this summer, as Providence recovered from the actions that were taking place downtown. And of course, this particular portrait. And, when I first began talking about Angie, about being a part of what's happening tonight, it was really important for me, especially in these times, because COVID has excavated like, decades of locusts, so many things that continue to reside and be alive within the subterranean conscience of this country. And so many artists like yourself and community activists like yourself have been at this work for a very long time. But because of something special popping up in the zeitgeist, all of a sudden it's like, Aganza, she's fabulous. Well, we all knew she was fabulous, but because of now and because of the way the conversations that we're having in our community and in this country, folks are paying attention. So I want to give you a chance, Angie, and I'm so grateful for you to be here to speak about your journey and your origin story, because your story didn't start with COVID. Your story didn't start with painting that first piece of plywood in downtown Providence at the Queen of Hearts. So I want to give you this opportunity to share with us who you are, and let's allow your story to come up from the earth and be present for all of us here today who have come to love your work. You are on fire.
Thank you, Joe. I feel like personally, a lot of people just like knew they think I just started with this plywood, and I'm trying to get that picture like when they had the piece of the 5 panels I had done. That piece, I've been doing this before, Black Lives Matter, and so I've been touching base on this, and this is not just of what I've been seeing going on nationwide. This is personal experience. I lived about 8 years in Dominican Republic, and so I personally firsthand have experienced hate towards me because I'm a female or I'm Latina, and I try to project what I go through in my artwork, and it so happened to I feel like COVID definitely revived all these topics that we've been talking about. Is just they react to this so beautifully. So I'm so grateful, but I just feel like this is something that we've been talking about and we will continue talking about. So, and that's how I kind of evolved to be the Aganza that everybody knows me for. So.
Can you speak a little bit more about because you have so many projects going on around town. You have been an advocate for artwork in public spaces and also the accessibility of that work. Yeah. Not just being a downtown thing, but being a South Side thing, being an Onlyville thing. Mm-hmm. Can you speak about the power of this work in communities and why you are so driven to have your work and a work of Afro-Latino artists being represented in these communities?
Absolutely. So I just felt as a young girl, you know, I grew up in the projects in Providence housing. And so as a little girl, you know, you don't see these big murals. You just see them in downtown, or you see them in big locations. And I'm just, you know, kids that grow up how I grew up, we don't get to go to downtown. You know, we go to school, we go home, and you know, our parents can't afford to bring us anything because they're working these crazy hours because they're immigrants and they can't, you know, they're working under the table. And so I was just like, I can't just do my paintings in downtown. Like, I need to bring my art and show that next little Aganza or that next artist that they can do it. If I can come from where you're coming from, then you can too. And so my project right now is I've partnered with Providence Housing and Art, Culture, and Tourism to do 2 walls facing each other right in Hartford projects where I was born and raised. And so the whole purpose of this is past, present, and future. And the whole point of the past is what our ancestors are and what we stand for, but the present is, you know, we're gonna make sure that these youth that look at what I'm doing and what we're all doing here is like, they're gonna take that, they're gonna learn from that, and they're gonna be the change. So that's currently what I'm all about, is just trying to get that message out that if I can come from where I come from and have nothing and no one, then you can too. So.
Great. Thank you, Angie. Thank you so much. And now I'm gonna kick it off to Janaea to introduce our next incredible artist. And then we'll open it up and we're gonna ask y'all a bunch of questions because I have a ton of questions to ask. And I know Janaea does as well. We were on the horn today going back and forth like, we gotta ask this and ask that. So we have a lot more to ask, but let me kick it off to Janaea and so she can introduce Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It is my pleasure to introduce you, Ken. We are here with Ken Borge, who is a Rhode Island native skateboarder, artist, and filmmaker. Ken, you and I have been working together as part of the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities Culture is Key project, which pairs institutions with media producers like yourself. To enhance civic outcomes. And alongside the wonderful journalist Will James and the fantastic filmmaker Lo Bell, you have been working to document the history of the Adrian Hallway Skate Park, which is right next to Trinity Rep and right by Providence Public Library. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and the work of local skaters to get that park established, and your work now with Culture is Key, documenting the history of your work?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm really grateful for being here. Yeah, the work that I did with the Friends of Adrian Hall and getting that skate park built, a lot of that was due to the work of Will Cornwell, who is really like the main person for the Friends of Adrian Hall group, and really the lead builder to getting the park built and designing it and stuff like that. A lot of my work is just documenting and filming. Being a skateboarder, I was always like, oh, let me try to go pro for skateboarding. And then after that dream kind of like died down and went somewhere else, I was like, hey, I still love skateboarding a lot. And I have a lot of friends who are skateboarding, and there's so much like great talent in Rhode Island, especially in Providence. And I just picked up a camera, and I actually bought a camera from my friend who was like the filmer. And then I just kind of transitioned into that role and started showing up at Trinity and started filming. Just kind of like anyone who was there day by day, it was just kind of like picking up and then just kind of hearing the stories of like what people wanted from Trinity. And this was before the park was even built or where it's at now. There was probably just like a bench there that I think New Urban Arts developed, or the Avenue concept, that they like just installed there. And that just kind of led to one thing, and Will Cornwell, who like opened the door to just say, hey, who else wants to like help out? And I was just kind of like present and just trying to be available and just try to help out as much as I can. And it just kind of escalated into like other things on top of just like, my interest of just throwing events for skateboarding and just trying to like just create space for the skate culture in Providence. Taking part in PVD Fest, doing that for like the past 3 years, and which led into meeting Christina and Janaea and them asking me to be a part of the Culture is Key project, which just kind of fell hand in hand, especially to the fact of just like the idea of civic engagement. And at the time, I just didn't even know, like, I didn't really know what that was, except for just having like an idea. And then like after looking it up and then like kind of relating it to what the Friends group is doing, it kind of just hit me to just be like, oh yeah, we're kind of doing this regardless of like, we didn't wake up one day and say, hey, let's be civically engaged. It was just something that we were just always doing. And I think it's something that's happening right now. Anyone who's skateboarding right now is kind of like engaging in a way, especially being a part of the community.
Thank you.
I would love to, if I can jump in, and what's fascinating listening to Asher and Ken and Aganza, all of your work is a celebration of community. And I'm especially struck with the stories we heard from even our employees at Trinity Rep, right? That they would go into work, those who could go in live, or not live, but go in person. The only sounds of downtown were people skating in the park, right? You go downtown and there's nobody there, but you can see a piece of Aganza's artwork celebrating our history and our community. We think about what Asher was doing, creating community by throwing T-shirts out of his car and developing his own rapport with the people that he was, creating community with. And so as much as your work is being celebrated now, in that, in this empty city, a city when we're all, in our homes and isolated, what still continues to exist is your work. I have to ask the other question is, have you, because of the public nature of your work and in contrast to the way that we receive it now, how have you all grappled pre-COVID with, because Angie, you've been unapologetic about your work and about, the fists and about the nature of your work, and about the communities that we specifically speak to. Has there been an issue around your content? Can you speak to how you struggle as artists with, the public nature of your content, and how that may have changed pre-COVID versus post-COVID, or if it's a continual struggle in terms of when you have your work existing in a public space?
That's a question for me, or?
For both of you, yeah.
Oh, okay. Andrew, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. I think, I get negative and positive from my own people and from others. People tell me, oh, you're played out. This has been happening. And I'm like, well, this is sad that this is still happening. And I'm still having to sit here after my ancestors have been doing the same thing and saying the same thing. So it's kind of sad. And so I feel like before I wasn't noticed because I felt like, I was that female Latina of, I'm just doing what everybody else is trying to do, but we're not going to try to bring up that conversation because people feel awkward. As to now, we're just like, now I'm so thankful for our community and like the Avenue Concept and Beyond Walls and Punto Urban Art. They've given me these platforms to like make people talk about it. It's like, no, we're going to talk about it. And so I think my art has brought that up. And I feel like one of my murals was actually one of the first fists in Providence. And it was very scary to know that people are going to come and vandalize my mural because I was talking about female power and color power. And I'm just like, oh my God, this painting's going to be vandalized, going to be spray painted. And it was like a hit. And the fact that COVID hit and Black Lives Matter hit right after it, it was just like the universe was just aligning and just was like, yes. And so till today, I'm doing murals and people will drive by and say really nasty things. And some people will drive by and say beautiful things. So I think it's very, very definitely political and controversial, but it needs to be talked about. So.
Great. And Ken, I got to tell you, I mean, I hope, you know, the juxtaposition of the skate park next to, you know, our theater where we have all of our Tony white patrons coming in and, you know, there's all the skating going on and that kind of clash of culture that happens every time, you know, people come into our institution, which we have to do our own work in terms of trying to be more welcoming and bringing more people into our space. You know, I speak to that same question to you as well in terms of how the community is seeing, but yet once people, is there a change once they're able to hear the narrative of who you are and what you believe and what you stand for and what are the values that exist within the community?
Yeah, right now with the skate scene in Providence specifically, I think like you're going to see like everything that's happening is kind of happening from the ground up right now. Whether it's like, I think there's a big thing in skateboarding where we're just skating, you know, all the other stuff, all the other noise that's happening around, like kind of leave that out there. But it's kind of got to the point where we have to, as a community, if we want to stay strong and stuff like that, we have to approach these things and we have to face these things and have these conversations. Whether it's like trying to gather everyone up to protest and feel like as a collective group, as opposed from just all the Black skaters go, you know, it's more of like everyone's just kind of come together. But still, as like a filmmaker, at least for me, what I'm trying to do is really showcase Black skating, just because like you're not seeing that, you know. When you think of skateboarding, you think of Tony Hawk, who's white, and you don't think of these Black faces who are like who have big impact in skateboarding in the scene. And this is just outside of Rhode Island. If you like, skateboarding in itself is just always like a rebellious thing. So like outside the park, we're always getting kicked out. Like our biggest person that we're always butting heads with is the security guard or the person who owns this property. But I think through the work that I'm trying to do and the steps that the Friends of Adrian Hall is trying to make is like try to have these conversations and also change, like you said, like change the narrative, change the perspective of these skaters, because we are doing stuff and it's going to start to become apparent soon, only because like everything's still just coming from the ground right now. I think like right now it's skateboarding's in a beautiful place just because there are people who are ready to step up and like really take charge in changing the perspective that people might not see.
Yeah, thank you. And you've both talked about having the conversations that nobody or that people want to avoid right now. In thinking about those and thinking as artists and as activists, how does your practice as artists influence the way that you have those conversations? How does your work, your training, your experiences inform your activism right now?
Well, I try to figure out what connects us. We're always focusing, there's been so many topics of hate and what makes us different and why there is the hate, but we're never talking about what connects us. And I think for me personally, I always try to, I analyze my environment. Wherever I'm going to be painting, I analyze it and I absorb it as much as possible. And you might think I'm crazy because I got these butterflies in my hair, but I truly believe the butterflies for me, and everywhere I go, and you'll see in all of my paintings there butterflies, as it's more of a historical thing for me, and it's special because I feel like we are all, when we're in this cocoon, and then that whole Black Lives Matter and the protesting and all that, that's breaking out of that cocoon, and we're trying to evolve as a butterfly. And each of us are evolving in different ways, but it's figuring out, okay, so we all connect and somehow we're all flying together. We're just different colors, we're different shapes, we're different patterns on us, and we can be as beautiful as we can. So I try to figure out how I can incorporate in my murals what connects us and what's so beautiful about that word community. So for me, that's what it is.
I love that idea. That's so transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Butterflies, we become together. Yeah. And Kenny, I think that's we see that too in your filmmaking work, the idea of gathering. How do you see your filmmaking and artistic work affecting the way that you civically engage?
Yeah, I think for my work, I always like go back to what Gil Scott-Heron says, like the revolution won't be televised, and like what you're watching whenever you see my films is kind of like the aftermath of like the work that is getting put in, which is like for me is like the journey that I want to put people on to, because like you're seeing only one thing, but then it's like always kind of like the next thing, you know. Especially just thinking about like the immense work that that I feel like every artist has to face, is just like kind of just sharing that voice, you know, to whatever like I don't want to say like whatever bothers them, but like whatever's the next challenge. If that makes sense.
You know, as I listen to you all talk, I just keep thinking about, because you all have such a strong sense of your practice, you know, and your process. And I know that as a fellow actor and director, professional artist, and teacher, which is really where I felt it equally, and that my pedagogy has absolutely had to change, because how I teach a beginning acting class in person is not how you're going to do it on Zoom, you know. But not only that, in terms of trying to decolonize my pedagogy, decolonize my own process, it's really shaped the way I'm looking at the scenes I assign, how I do what I do, how I see myself in certain plays, how I'm putting my Black gay body in spaces. So my question for y'all is, how has the pandemic at all, if at all, or with the combination of this sort of renewed awareness around the Black Lives Matter movement, and let's just say a renewed a celebration of the Black Lives Matter movement, because y'all remember, you know, and before we started seeing the baby strollers and white folks and different kinds of folks at BLM movements, that was something else. So how has the pandemic or the movement, or the reignition of the movement, changed the way you do your work? Has it changed it in terms of structurally, strategically, thematically? I'm sure simply the isolation and the fact that we can't be together has shifted that. But can you speak practically about how COVID and how our reinterrogation of white supremacy and anti-Blackness in this country has changed your work?
I'm gonna say it's changed it a lot. I think it's the whole, you know, I was in the shadow, and now everybody's like, whoa, Aganza's been talking about this. And so for me personally, I think now I'm thinking bigger. I'm like going big or go home, and I'm figuring out, kind of like what Ken said, what's the challenges and what do I need? What's the next challenge? Because there's always a challenge after that. You know, we solve one thing, there's another next problem. And how do I be able to engage with that? But I feel like personally as well, I think what you said, being unapologetically yourself, I think I've learned I'm always trying to filter myself. Like, all right, what do they expect from me as a female Latina? And it's like, no, I don't need to be what people expect from me. I'm going to be myself. I don't care what anybody says. And now I'm being more bold and putting things on murals that I like would be scared of. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to be, and that's what people love, is just that I'm just literally just saying what I'm feeling and painting what I'm feeling. And so I think that's it's for some folks, for like the whiter folks, it's a little bit uncomfortable. Certain, like when I have meetings and I'm like, no, let's talk about hair. Like, why does braids have to be this, or why does afros? Why can't I put an afro in my? So what's the problem with an afro? So it's bringing up those conversations that I wouldn't do before COVID, because this whole topic wasn't brought up, and I would seem like that you know, colored girl who's trying to, you know, bring the racism card. And it's like, no, but it's true. So I think that's the difference between before and now.
And Ken, how about for you? I mean, you know, you know, again, we talk about the constant soundscape of Adrian Hall Way is the life that the community of skaters bring to that space. How has COVID and sort of the re-examination, a more focused examination on race relations in this country, on threats to democracy in this country, how has that changed? What are folks talking about things in a different way? Has it changed the nature of when you all get together to skate? Can you talk a little bit about that, you know, pre-pandemic and what that means for you all now?
Yeah. I mean, even during pandemic, it was, I mean, we can go back even to when Trump was elected, and just like how things were then. And I guess it was like kind of like icy, you know, people didn't want to talk about it. People wanted to just like, hey, let's just skate and let's not talk about it, you know? But during the pandemic, and it just amplified. For speaking for myself in terms of my films and stuff, I always set to have Black people as the main focus in all my films. And I mean, I film everyone, but like you will always see more Black people than others, just because, especially just people of color. And with everything that was happening all 2020, that just amplified. And the footage that I've collected over the last year is going to like set that tone. And what you're going to see is like a change in a way of like how I guess like curate my films in terms of like the music selection that I plan to use for each person. Because I mean, hip hop is a big influence in skateboarding and stuff, and just making sure that like not only because you want to make some, I feel like you want to make something that's entertaining, but also something that like in a way tells a story, and I hope in my films to like do that with like proper like curation of that, because I'm not just gonna put like any like a banger on and like just make sure everyone like gives people what they want, you know. I feel like with everything that's been going on, it kind of like I just kind of felt like there was this thing that was like, hey, just step into this role and kind of do something that's kind of bigger than yourself and make these statements.
It's so great because it's like this has been such a trying time for all of us, but I'm almost ashamed to say sometimes that I've found really incredible moments of opportunity, actually. I am finding my own voice as an artist and not being dominated by my own fear that, we all have talked about, that fear that gets engendered within us, indoctrinated within us. And it's actually been quite liberating in the midst of so much that's changed and so much grief, finding those moments when I can hear my voice clearly. And that's actually kept me going as well. And so I really appreciate you all speaking about that, because I feel that as well. Yeah. If I could, I got to ask one other question, because, as I talk about, and as we talk about, and Janae and I, we've all been going back and forth about this, Christina Bevilacqua, as we even have been preparing for this conversation, is there is so much that we want to tell to kiss our butts to this past year. Not being able to hug our grandparents, not being able to go out and have dinner or have a drink with your friends. There's so much that we can't do, not being able to teach an acting class in person. But I want to give you all a chance maybe to respond to, what would you keep about now? What about now in terms of practice, or in terms of your work, in terms of your ethic, in terms of what you've discovered? What would you want to hold on to that you've learned or that you've experienced, or a practice or an idea that is in the zeitgeist now? What is salvageable about this awful year?
I'm going to say we've taken a break. I think COVID helped the world stop for a second and just said, and I think we've all just internalized ourselves. We've had this moment where we have so much solidarity that we're realizing who we are and what the issues are going. And I think that we needed that. We needed to just stop everything, just absolutely everything, and be like, whoa, this is really happening. And I think that needed to happen. So I feel like, I'm glad that happened, because people are realizing, and it's not just me as an artist, but there's many artists of us. And that's why I had painted you, Joe, because, a lot of people, I was wanted to celebrate, it's the point of, why are we celebrating people after they're dead? And it's like, we want to, like, we're living right now. Why aren't we appreciating us as humans? We are on earth together. And so, and that's my whole point. Like, now I'm being able to celebrate these alive people on these walls and tell them how great they're doing, and to keep it up and motivate them to keep doing even more. And so I would never take that away. I think we needed that. We needed to just stop and see our environment, what the heck is going on. So,
and see each other.
Yeah.
And see each other anew.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, what do you think? What would you keep?
It's like kind of the same thing, like the time that we had to like kind of isolate ourselves, whether it's a reset or get a deadline extension. I think it's just like time. I feel like before the pandemic, we were so, me and my friend, we talk about like being months ahead of schedule. Like if the pandemic wasn't happening right now, I would probably already be in 2022 planning PVD Fest, and it was kind of good to just kind of like stop and do one project and kind of finish that, and then like move on to the next one, but like kind of plan that out and kind of look forwards to that, especially like in skateboarding. It's like once you release one video, it's kind of like, all right, when's the next one going to come up? Or like, or just the content in itself just gets kind of forgotten about after the first two viewings. You kind of like already seen it all, so it's kind of like good to like have a body of work to release it and let people kind of like really take that in and like really ingest it and like kind of get it, because sometimes there's like little things in a video that you might miss.
Hey, Laura, could you give me some fingers? How much time do we have left?
It looks like it's about time for us
to wrap it up. It's about time. So, Janaea, you want to wrap us up? And I just want to say a quick thank you to you both. It's been just really great to have you here and to be in community with you. And America 2 has always been, since we first began with this program, it's about uplifting stories and celebrating those stories in our community that continue to exist and continue to persevere. But just to say, let's keep this work going, and we thank you and we celebrate you. Janaea?
Thank you, Aganza. Thank you so much, Ken. This was a great conversation. We both really look forward to seeing your artwork. And I don't know if you've been seeing the comments in the chat, but everybody loves y'all, and we're really looking forward to the future and to working with you both. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much
for having me. I appreciate it.
Love you. Thank you.
This project is made possible in part by a grant from the Rhode Island Council on the Humanities, an independent affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The Rhode Island Council for the Humanities seeds, supports, and strengthens public history, cultural heritage, civic education, and community engagement by and for all Rhode Islanders. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities.